Sometimes I wonder why they bother reporting the news at all when they're not going to be straightforward with what's actually happening. But I guess that's why many people come and watch videos like this, because we'll try and break down what the truth is through all the lies. You see, we have this story from Deadline. Vice President Kamala Harris at Walter Reed Hospital for routine medical appointment. Thank you for reporting this. I don't care. What? Are we going to do a news story every time a politician goes to the doctor for a physical? Oh, wait a minute. No, they needed to report on this story because it's a little bit different than just a routine medical appointment. You see, Deadline, to their credit, they put routine in quotes. And the photo they used shows Kamala Harris meeting with Texas Democrats. You know why that's significant? Because a few of the Texas Democrats who fled the state to illegally block voter rights legislation have tested positive for COVID. Apparently, there's some journalists are tweeting that when the White House found out that these Democrats tested positive for COVID, like Kamala Harris and her team started freaking out like, oh no, now she's got to go to the hospital. Here's the thing. Whether or not she's testing positive or whatever, she came into contact with people who have COVID, right? Okay. So the appropriate thing for Kamala Harris to do is quarantine for 2 weeks. Now she goes to the hospital. I don't know exactly if they're coming out and saying she has COVID or anything like that. I think they're saying she doesn't. And they're trying to say that she wasn't actually in close proximity with these people, even though there's a photo of her in close proximity with these people. That's why I'm like, I don't understand why they even bother reporting this stuff sometimes. It doesn't matter. What's the incubation period for COVID? 3 days to 2 weeks. Okay, Kamala, quarantine for 2 weeks. I don't see why that's a big deal. The Democrats have long pushed for these policies. They're the ones who wanted the lockdowns. Why is it that they bother reporting these stories if they're going to come out and say no plans for Kamala Harris to quarantine after meeting with COVID positive polls from Texas? Are you kidding me? We're in the midst of this Delta variant wave where the Democrats are the ones trying to push these new policies and these new rules. It is still blue states, cities that are the ones implementing these new restrictions. Okay, put your money where your mouth is. Now, I think we're going to start seeing something interesting with COVID, and we got to start with the vice president, but we're also hearing the Olympics. Apparently they're having COVID outbreaks. We got this story out of Nevada. Look at this. Las Vegas cafe owner says he and his employees are shocked by renewed mask mandate. Now, of course, you may have heard Los Angeles has brought back the mask mandate. Las Vegas has brought back the mask mandate. And I'm going to go ahead and make that bet. I believe there is a strong likelihood. I'm not saying I know if it will for sure happen. I'm just saying probability-wise that we bring lockdowns back, baby. Oh, I'm not kidding. I mean, you look at, I think in Victoria in Australia, they're doing lockdowns again. Canada is still in lockdown. How much you want to bet in the U.S., the blue states they start coming out and saying, come on, man, we got the Delta variant. You got to lock it down. And the red states are going to say no. And this is going to be a deep fissure in an already divided nation. We have diverged, man. I mean, this country has split in two a long time ago. And it's crazy that I'm even at this point where I'm saying it. It's strange that we have movies coming out. I went and saw, Black Widow, and there's still a part of our culture that seems to be normal. But then you look at how Joe Biden, when he talks to the nation, he's talking only to blue states. That is the biggest indicator of some crazy, I don't know what's going on. You look at how the Democrats can literally be like, everyone's got to wear a mask, quarantine. And then Kamala Harris is like, I'm not gonna. She's not going to go quarantine or do any of that stuff. It feels like we are headed towards a big lockdown. And I don't know for sure. Again, people don't confuse this with a prediction. I'm just saying, based on the things I've just shown you, we've got LA mask mandates coming back, Las Vegas mask mandates coming back. We have Texas Democrats getting COVID. We have constant news about the Delta variant and even the Epsilon variant. And they're saying that cases are starting to rise and they're worried, blah, blah, blah. Here we go. If this escalation continues, it seems that we are on a track towards more lockdowns again, right? Now, it may be a small, I don't know. I'm just saying, look at what's happening and it's possible, right? I feel like it is likely, but I don't know for sure. I'm not a psychic. I'm just saying these things tend to provide evidence that may be the case. So here's the story, ladies and gentlemen, from Deadline. Actually, you know what? I got something to show you. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com for the amazing new timcast.com website. It's fantastic. We've got news articles. We've got the members only section. Become a member and you will get access to exclusive members only segments from the Timcast IRL podcast. But we are planning a whole bunch more members only content from a bunch of different shows. It's going to be really great. We're having a new show launching, but just look at this. We have, I think, like 7 writers so far for the site. So we've got a ton of different news articles. You can go to the read section. Maybe it should say news, but there you go. So check out timcast.com, become a member. Let's read the news. Oh, yeah, like this video, share, and subscribe and all that stuff. They say the unusual Sunday medical appointment raised eyebrows in the media. But Simone Sanders, senior advisor and chief spokesperson for Harris, said Saturday that the vice president and her staff at a meeting with 2 infected people were not at risk of exposure to the virus. The White House assured that Harris and her staff were not at risk of exposure because they were not in close contact with those who tested positive and therefore do not need to be tested or quarantined, Sanders said. The vice president and her staff are fully vaccinated. Hold on a minute. I'm sorry. How do you define close proximity? Because here she is in this room. You mean to tell me that when she came in, she didn't greet these people? She doesn't shake hands? I mean, that would be weird. Look, I've gone to events. Maybe she doesn't walk up and go individually shaking every hand. That would maybe be weird, I guess. But she's not in close proximity with these people. I just honestly think it's an excuse. Kamala doesn't want to quarantine, so she's not going to quarantine. She should quarantine regardless. They're going to say Vice President Kamala Harris and her staff avoided COVID-19 exposure at a recent meeting with Texas lawmakers, 2 of whom have now tested positive, according to the White House office of the vice president spokesperson. On Tuesday, July 13th, Vice President Harris met with members of the Texas state legislature who are temporarily in Washington, D.C. Earlier today, it was brought to our attention that 2 of the members at that meeting tested positive for COVID-19. Based on the time of these positive tests, it was determined the vice president and her staff present at the meeting were not at risk of exposure because they were not in close contact with those who tested positive, therefore do not need to be tested or quarantined. And then they brought her to the hospital. So that's why I'm just like, do they think people are stupid? Yeah, they do. And unfortunately, there are a lot of stupid people. So I don't get it. Is their bet that there are more stupid people than smart people? I mean, you don't even got to be that smart. You got to be of average intelligence to realize what's going on, right? They think she actually may have got sick, so they brought her to the hospital for a test. They don't want to admit it because then if they're bringing her to the hospital to get tested, she has to quarantine regardless. A test at this point is pointless. Okay? If she's positive or negative, she still needs to quarantine. So that's why they're like, no. Okay, please. They go on to say, Texas House's Democratic Caucus Director, Philip Martin, announced on Saturday that 3 of the state's Democratic lawmakers had tested positive for COVID-19 while in the nation's capital. More than 50 Texas House Democrats arrived in D.C. on Monday in an attempt to block passage of a Republican-backed law which would impose new voting requirements in the Lone Star State. Wow, deadline. I absolutely respect that sentence. That right there. Because you heard me say earlier, I called it a voting rights bill because I'm pushing back on the framing devices they use. I do think the Texas law and many other laws do protect the rights of voters, but I also think the Republicans are giving up and giving in, and they're giving Democrats half of what they want. But that sentence right there, that breaks it down. It is a Republican-backed law which would impose new voting requirements in Lone Star State. I respect it, but I must still correct it. It's not completely right. It's not new voting requirements. Perhaps some of them may be, so perhaps that's fair still. But they removed a ton of requirements and provided a way more leeway because of COVID. The Republicans are still only walking it back a little bit. But at least they're not saying, voter restriction law like the Democrats are. At the moment, the legislators in question remain in D.C. Their names and conditions were not released. Each member of the delegation who tested positive for COVID-19 via a rapid test had previously been vaccinated against the virus. Wow. Really? The Democrats who tested positive were vaccinated. So it seems like we're getting more and more of these stories where people who are vaccinated are still getting sick. I guess what people are saying is that the point of the vaccine is so that if you get it, you won't get sick from it. Like you'll be asymptomatic, I guess. I don't know. Talk to your doctor about it. Don't come to me for advice. I don't want to get sued. And YouTube will ban me too. They go on to say, For the White House, a positive COVID-19 test on the part of Harris or one of her staffers could have potentially spelled disaster. While President Biden received a second vaccination against COVID all the way back in January, the 78-year-old Pennsylvania native remains at high risk of severe illness should he contract the virus given his advanced age. That's right. And they go on to say in an update, a day after assurances from the White House that Vice President Kamala Harris did not contract COVID-19 after exposure to 2 infected legislators, she's at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center for what's described as a routine visit. Ah, there it is. So I think we get it. She's not going to quarantine. She's not playing by the Democrats' rules, even though everything's locking down. And a discerning person could realize why routine was in quotes. They're worried. Check this out from Fox News. Joe Piero, owner of Market Grill Cafe in Las Vegas, told Fox and Friends Weekend that he and his employees are shocked by the city's renewed COVID-19 indoor mask mandate and what it could mean for business. I'm not sure what's happening, Piero said on Sunday. I thought the whole idea of getting vaccinated is it prevents us from having to wear a mask. All the signs out there tell me it's not heading in the right direction. I agree. Piero said the new order, which came on the heels of LA County's decision to reinforce indoor mask wearing, all came on so quickly. We're just shocked, he continued. All the struggles that we made to get where we are today, and knowing there's a possibility that we might have to revert back. Really, do we have to go back here once again? Small businesses across the country struggled or were even forced to shutter this past year amid strict COVID mandates. This we know. I think everybody knows. LA County explained on Friday that the city's renewed mask mandate would be enforced regardless of vaccination status. We are not where we need to be for the millions at risk of infection here in LA, and waiting to do something will be too late, given what we're seeing, LA County Health Director Dr. Muntu Davis said in a virtual press briefing. However, LA County Sheriff Alex Villanueva said that due to a current lack of funding, his department would not be dedicating resources to enforce the resurrected mandate. The LA County Department of Public Health has authority to enforce the order, but the underfunded, defunded Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department will not expend our limited resources and instead ask for voluntary compliance. We encourage the DPH to work collaboratively with the Board of Supervisors and law enforcement to establish mandates that are both achievable and supported by science. And that's coming from LA County Sheriff Alex Villanueva. You know, I think lockdowns are coming. We got this story out of the Olympics. U.S. women's gymnastics team member tests positive for COVID while training 4 days before Tokyo Olympics opening ceremony. This means the infected athlete, they say, is not Simone Biles or any of the other 5 athletes. However, it may result in many of them being forced to quarantine. But let's get a little anecdotal here for a second. We went out the other day. Right? I went to a diner, and it took us like an hour to get our food. I mean, granted, we had a decently sized party. We were 8 people. Okay, but there was only one waitress at the diner, and bless their hearts, they were working very, very hard, and we gave them a good tip to thank them for what they were doing. This is a diner fairly, decently far away, like 40, 50 minutes away from where I live. There was a diner near where I live, and they put up a sign recently. I posted on Instagram where they said they're closing at 5 p.m. because they're understaffed. When we went to that diner, we went there at like 4. Half the diner is closed off, like no seating available because they're understaffed. There's no wait staff. Something is, we get it, guys. It's the Great Reset. Here's what let me tell you what I think is happening with all of this. I think they're going to bring back the restrictions. I mean, they are. We're seeing it in LA and Las Vegas. It's going to one step at a time. Maybe not. I'm not a psychic, right? I think lockdowns will eventually come back to a certain degree, but it feels like, they're still giving these people this unemployment. They've extended it. They've extended the moratorium on evictions. Some people just aren't working. Some people are. I think the people who are working, they're probably making less. No joke. These servers, we went to an ice cream stand the other day too. There are people working there. No doubt they're making less money than they would if they were on unemployment. Because I think unemployment right now is like $16 an hour, something that's the equivalent. In which case, these people who are working are getting less, but these are people who probably have scruples. They probably feel like I have to work. I can't exploit the system like that. But more and more people are dropping out. And so I started to think about this, because we're sitting at this diner, it's taking a long time. And I'm like, it's basically a lockdown. You know what I mean? Like, they don't need to lock everything down if you can't get service. So maybe we won't see those harsh lockdowns. So again, maybe. But the idea that the lockdowns have been lifted is kind of a half truth. I was sitting there wondering why it was taking so long to get our food. I know we had a big party, but they had one server and like one line cook or whatever. And then I was just like, we're all talking, and I'm like, look, they've got 2 employees right now, like literally just 2 people working this diner. It wasn't the biggest diner in the world, but they had a lot of people who wanted to eat. And I was like, what's going to happen? We're not going to come out next time. We're going to be like, do you want to go to the diner? Oof. But it's going to take like an hour and a half. Like we're going to be waiting an hour to get our food, and then we're going to have to eat. It's like we're going to be there for a long time. It's not that convenient anymore. So maybe not. Maybe we just go and buy our own stuff. It's 2 things. It's a soft lockdown in a sense. A lot of fast food restaurants, they don't have staff. I mean, I drive down the street. You probably see signs everywhere saying we're hiring, bonuses, open interviews. And so we're like, it's not really fast food anymore. Why bother going to the fast food place to get the burger when it's going to take forever? This will not stop everyone from going to get a burger. I'm sure many of you will still go out to the diner. And I got to say, that diner I went to, it was fantastic. I got this thing. It was like a cheeseburger hoagie. It's fantastic. But this pressure applied on society will result in people probably very gradually preferring to do something different. Stay home, cook at home, and act as though they're locked down, regardless of the harsh lockdowns. They'll go outside, they'll play football, they'll go skating or whatever. And they're going to be going to restaurants less. They're going to be going to the movies less and less. Now we're seeing the mask mandates again, and that's going to be another bit of applied pressure. It's actually quite convenient for the lockdown people that conservatives don't want to wear masks, because the conservatives are going to be like, I'm not going to that restaurant. And they're like, okay, we're locking it down. If you don't show up, fantastic, right? Soft pressure, pushing people out. And so here's what I think is happening. Take a look at the supply chain globally, and there's a ton of stuff. But right now, there's a ton of stuff that still exists, and not a whole lot of people who are making stuff. I mean, relatively, there's not a whole lot of people, but there are, like numerically, lots of people still working. But a lot of stuff isn't getting made. Restaurants are understaffed, which means I wouldn't be surprised if these food shortages, which there are food shortages, there's chicken shortages. Did you see there's commercials now? What commercial was this? I can't remember what it was, but they said it was because of the wing shortage, they're doing thighs now. I swear, it was like, are you worried about the chicken wing shortage? And they're like, no, we're doing thighs. I can't remember which company it was. But yeah, I mean, food shortages are legit. There's chicken, there's beef. There's been a ton of other shortages. There's oil shortages. Did you know that? Yeah. Local news will tell you. National news, not so much. And so here's what I think is happening. They're giving out all this money. This unemployment benefits, the child tax benefits. You can't be evicted. And that money means people can extract from the system, but it means they don't have to put back into the system. So it's kind of like, it feels like they're saying, hey, can we drain the keg, finish off the keg before we switch it out? So they're basically just filling up cups and passing them out really, really quickly just to drain the keg. Everyone's going to be buying from the system, pulling out resources, not putting things into it. Eventually, the system will run dry. I wonder what that'll look like. How are you dealing with that idea? Maybe it won't get that bad. They call it the Great Reset, and that's what it feels like. Now, I will say this, and I've said this several times before. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, it's not all bad. There's an open window. There's a closed door. It's an open window. I think the problem is the city people, as I often say, have been someone who's lived in a city for a long time. Wasteful, polluted, unnatural, concrete cubicles, spilled milk, waste everywhere, disregard for human life. And these cities are pretty bad. So I'll tell you who's being the most negatively impacted by this. People in the cities. That's probably why they freak out so much over everything. Why do you think they're like, wear your mask, get the vaccine, and they're screaming? Because their lives suck in cities. And the conservative people who are more likely to be in rural areas probably don't care all that much because look, even if you live in the suburbs, you got your own backyard, right? So you could just go in the backyard. On the south side of Chicago, houses in the city proper have small backyards. It's funny, small, but you do. You can go in the backyard, you can play ring toss or whatever, or throw darts, and you can be outside breathing that air. It's not particularly fresh air because, it's like the airport's there and everything like that. But at least you can go outside. New York doesn't have that. I mean, Some of the brownstones have little backyards for sure, but for only for the people who live on the first floor, you pay a little extra for it. The people who are above it might, like, in a lot of places you'll negotiate backyard use, but people are basically in New York City across the board crammed into these. They got no yards. Just put it mildly. It's not nice to be jammed up, crammed up, and unable to go outside for the most part. So these people are freaking out. And that's why they're demanding everybody, this is what we talk about in the IRL podcast, that Democrats demand national policy for local issues. So they're screaming about what should be done nationally. When I look out my window right now, I see forest. Literally, like the other office I was in, you see mountains. Now where I'm at, I see forest. Just no joke, like literally just forest. And deer walking around. I can walk outside and probably walk a mile before, actually, I could probably walk like 2 miles before encountering a human being or more. So are we all that worried about locking down or vaccines and all that stuff? People out here in the middle of nowhere, probably not. They're like, why? I'm not near anybody. And, we've got our gardens. We grow our own food. We got a ridiculous amount of pumpkin right now. It's fantastic. We're going to make some pumpkin stuff. And we're going to make, this one zucchini is like, no joke. It's massive. It was just left on too long. It's huge. And so we're not freaking out about it. The Democrats are. They live in big cities. They're freaking out. So I'll tell you what, this is why I think we're probably going to see some kind of, lockdowns. Because Democrats demand national policy for local issues. So when someone in New York has to wear a mask, they start screaming everyone should be wearing a mask. And they have no idea what it's like to live on a farm in the middle of Idaho. But they think you should wear a mask. Okay, look. If they're going to bring back the recommendations and the mandates, I think you should pay attention to your local rules and everything, but we'll do our best. But at this point, I think things are much too broken. Sorry, I think things are much too broken. You try to be a good person. You try to say we're going to pitch in, but let me just explain something to the YouTube censors and to the people in the Democrats. Mike Cernovich tweeted this out. When people were out in the streets by the thousand without masks on, they said it was fine. They said they weren't super spreader events. And you lost everyone at that moment. Now they don't believe you because you can't say that a sporting event is and a protest isn't. They're large groups of people standing shoulder to shoulder. And you're like, nope, that one's fine. That one's not. And immediately they said, okay, you're lying. And therein lies the problem. Cernovich said he believed that vaccination rates nationwide would be over 80% if they never did that. And I completely agree. There's a lot of people now who completely distrust everything coming out of the establishment. I say go to your doctor. I say, be active in local politics. Let me put it this way. I think you should be following local health guidelines 100%. I know I will. Out in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing to follow. You walk into the forest. That's it. But in your local area, if you are concerned about the guidance, you should be involved in politics. So I'll tell you this. I'm not going to pretend I have the answers. You don't have to do what I tell you. I am not your boss or an authority over you. It's giving you my thoughts and opinions, which may be wrong. But I will tell you, the one thing I think you should do, be active in local politics. If you're a Democrat and you think they're not doing enough to stop COVID, you should be active in politics. Now, I guess the reality is Democrats often are. If you're a Republican, conservative, rural, whatever, anti-establishment, whatever, and you're concerned about the things that are being implemented in terms of COVID, you should be active in local politics. You should be having the meetings with the board members. You should be running for these positions. And then you should be engaging people with what you think the people actually want to do. Ultimately, I just want to put it this way. Don't come to me to be absolved of responsibility. I don't think most of you do, but I'm just saying, I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. I'm not here to tell you what you have to do. I'm going to tell you what's going on and to my best inform you so that you can make decisions for yourself. So I'll tell you this. Your health, your decisions, you talk to your doctors and the people you trust. There are good doctors out there, man. If you don't like the doctor you have and you think they're not smart, maybe you should find a better doctor. And it might not be easy, but I just got to say this. There's so many people I hear, because I mention this a lot where they're like, oh, my doctor's not smart. Like, bro, if I hired a plumber and he came back and he like couldn't fix my pipe, I wouldn't hire him again. I wouldn't just assume that because he's a plumber, he's good at what he does. The same is true for a doctor. If you go to a doctor and something doesn't seem right, it's called second opinions and it's called looking for other doctors. I go on these websites and you can see people rate clinics. They're like, this one's really bad. This doctor sucks. Because like any profession, you can have good or bad people. So instead of assuming that doctors are just bad, just go find a good doctor. Try hard, because I'm not a doctor. I can't tell you what you're supposed to do. I can tell you, I think the government's botched everything. The Democrats are mostly to blame. And now Kamala Harris is like, oh, I'm not going to get quarantined. Okay, please. You've lost the trust of the people. And that's a huge problem. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.